Hello and welcome to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society's St. Patrick's Day live stream. Hope you're all doing well and thanks for tuning in. I'm Richard Gosselin. I am the editor of the Society's members magazine Unfiltered, and I will be your host tonight. I'll be joined shortly by Jenna Eli, who's over in New York, and she's going to be coming into the live stream very soon. But we've got a big night ahead for you. Lots going on and lots to celebrate. All things Irish tonight, with maybe a wee bit of Scotch whisky thrown in for good measure. We are going to catch up very soon with Irish whisky writer Marin Summers. Then we're going to cross over to West Cork Distillers in Skibbereen to speak to Dennis Hurley from there. Next stop is Dublin. We're going to stop in at bar 1661 to catch up with Dave Mulligan, a good friend of the Society over there in Dublin. Then the next stop is Melbourne, Australia. We're going to meet our Society ambassador, Alex Moores, who's been doing some research into the Society's non-Scotch whisky bottlings over the years. We're hoping to catch up with Mark Rainier, the boss at Waterford. He is in an airport in the US, but he's promising to find a quiet corner and hopefully a decent internet connection. So we'll catch up with Mark later in the evening to find out about all the interesting things that he's up to at Waterford and elsewhere. And finally, we're going to catch up with Mark Thompson. He's a broadcaster, graphic designer, kind of like a cultural historian. And we're going to be talking to Mark about the connections between Ireland and Scotland, especially in the whisky world. So all that plus some music. We've got a pub quiz, big Irish whisky pub quiz coming your way. So lots to get stuck into this evening. As always, get involved. Let us know where you are. Let us know what's in your glass. Let us know how you're celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And if you've got any questions for any of our guests or anything that you want to point out, put it in the comments and we can see it here and pick it up as we go along. And I should say we've got a really, really good prize on offer tonight for UK and EU members of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I'll show you it right here. It is a bottle of the Society's bottling 150.1 Let's Go West, the Society's 150th distillery that we've bottled from. And we've got a bottle of that to give away tonight. It's, as I said, it's for members in the UK and EU only, but we are asking you to email in your name and your Society membership number to an email address. It is St. Pat's Day Competition at smws.com. And I tell you what, I've got a little ticker that I'll put up there and you can see the email address, St. Pat's Day Competition at smws.com. You just need to email your name and Society membership number to that, and we will put all the names in a hat and we will draw them out of the hat and announce the winner before the end of the evening, probably about 9:15. So keep an eye on that and get your entries in. And my colleague Mads will be keeping an eye on that as the evening goes on. So lots happening, but let's kick off with some music. We have a wonderful little band from, where are they from? They are from County Clare. Phelim Collins, Dave Sanders and Alan Wallace from O'Loughlin's Irish Whisky Bar in Ballyvaughan, County Clare. So let's kick off with some music from these guys. Great stuff. That was the guys, Phelim, Dave and Alan in O'Loughlin's Irish Whiskey Bar in County Clare. I've not had the pleasure myself, but I'm told it's a cracking whiskey bar run by Peter and Margaret O'Loughlin, with a collection of more than 400 whiskies and something of a whiskey museum in its own right. So sounds like it's well worth a visit. Right, let me start by bringing in our first guest this evening. We're delighted to be joined by Marin Summers. She is an Irish whiskey writer, writing for quite a long time about Irish whiskey, and based in London, but very much Irish. So Marin, thanks for joining us. How's your St. Patrick's Day so far?
Thank you for having me. It's good. It's gotten better now that there's a glass of whiskey in front of me.
Good stuff. So Marin, you've been covering the Irish whiskey scene for quite a long time, and you must have seen like big changes in the period that you've been writing about the whiskey scene in general.
Yeah, definitely. I got lucky. I started drinking whiskey basically when I turned 18, 19, and I went to university. And back then was sort of when things were only starting to change. And it wasn't until I went to start working for Jameson as a tour guide in Dublin that Teeling opened and Dingle was getting up and running. So I was really lucky to be a part of that as the Irish whiskey landscape started to change back then. And it's been great to watch. And it's a really exciting time for Irish whiskey. So I hope you're all Irish whiskey fans, even though I know your main focus is Scotch.
And what do you think is driving the renaissance in Irish whiskey?
I think it's a few things, really. I think we're definitely very proud of our, I suppose, national spirit. If I can call it that, I don't know, Dave Mulligan might be saying poutine should be our national spirit. But I think Irish whiskey definitely has a place in a lot of our hearts. And I think most households will have a bottle of Irish whiskey somewhere in a cupboard and always have. So it's always been there and we're very proud of it. But things were the same for quite a long time. And I think we can definitely attribute a lot of the growth that we've seen in the category to Jameson and what it's achieved. Without Jameson, the Irish whiskey category wouldn't really exist. It has driven our growth across the world. And as a result, there's an opportunity now for other Irish distilleries to enter those markets, to gain distribution, to really grow in places like the US, the UK, China. I know when I moved here in about 2017, 2018, Jameson was pretty much the Irish whiskey category here. And that's beginning to change now, which is brilliant. And there was a time when Jameson was the only real Irish whiskey you'd be able to buy here, whereas now you see so many more bottles behind the till, and it's fantastic and it's great to see. And it's been really wonderful to be a part of this growth and to watch it happen.
And there's so much going on. Any projects, distillery openings, anything of particular interest to you that catches your attention, and people that are doing something just really different, really out there?
Well, I know Fionn has written a very interesting article for you guys for Unfiltered recently. And what Fionn is doing with his research into mash bills, and especially the old mash bills where they were using oats and rye and looking at, I suppose, how whiskey was back then, is so fascinating. And I'm so excited to see the liquids that come out of places like Boan and Declanville who are working on that with him. I think it's absolutely wonderful that he's sort of reviving the old traditions of Irish whiskey, because for a long time, I suppose, again, Jameson, Powers, Bushmills, that was what people knew and what the category was known for. So Fionn doing that research and working on that is really exciting and really special. When it comes to liquid itself, I'm very interested in wood and maturation and the impact that a barrel can have on the liquid. So for me, it's more places like Middleton, where they're making Method and Madness and experimenting with some really interesting woods. That sort of lights a fire under me and gets me very excited about the category. Their first bottling was the French chestnut, which was very exciting. And the first time we'd sort of seen something on the market that wasn't really ex-bourbon, ex-sherry, ex-PX. So that was very exciting. I think also places like Glendalough, who've done a lot with Japanese oak, Mizunara wood. They make some beautiful liquid there that's rested in those barrels. I think that's very exciting. And it's great to see even places like Killowen, which is a very small distillery, they're using really exciting casks. And I think that's one of the beauties of the Irish whiskey renaissance. We're not yet at the point where we can see the liquids that are coming out of a lot of these distilleries because they're just not old enough. But for now, what we can do is experiment with wood and maturation and have a really fun time with it, because I think in Scotland you have to use specific barrels, whereas I know in Ireland it's just wood. So there's a lot of room and scope to experiment.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a bit more leeway, as you say, under SWA regulations. It has to be oak to mature Scotch, but you don't have to use oak for Irish whiskey. I mean, I think it's still got to be 3 years old, right? And it's still got to be a certain size of cask, 700 litres maximum, but you're not restricted by the use of oak.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It means you can experiment with whatever you want. Hungarian oak, like I said, French chestnut, Mizunara. My boyfriend's favorite one at the moment is the Method and Madness in mulberry wood. So there's loads of scope there and loads to try. And like I said, while we're waiting for these new liquids to come out of the distilleries when they're ready, this is the exciting phase of the Irish whiskey renaissance at the moment, I think.
Yeah, but it feels like you're digging into your history as well. Like you're talking about Finn's experimenting with old mash bills, and there's this real dive into Irish whiskey's great history, where, it did rule the world, I suppose, at one point. And you're kind of rediscovering that history that made Irish whiskey what it was.
Absolutely. And it's all kind of thanks to Fionn really going to the National Archives, digging through boxes and uncovering these gems of information that nobody really knew about. And not just Fionn, it's also the distilleries he's working with who are willing to, take a leap of faith and try to make these mash bills again, not knowing what to expect. Because I think you can expect a certain flavor profile, but you're not guaranteed it, and you don't really know what'll happen. And also, things taste different now. You can't confirm that it'll be the same strain of oats or barley or whatever. So I think it's really exciting that we're looking at our history again. And we've seen a lot of old Irish brands come back. Diageo relaunched Roe & Co. And a lot of old brands have been reinvigorated, which is great to see.
Fantastic. Is Jenna there? Hey, Jenna, how you doing?
Hi. I'm well. How are you?
From the US, and nice to see you, Jenna. I think my next question was actually more relevant to you, because I was wondering to what extent, Marin, you think the US market is driving this renaissance in Irish whiskey, because it seems to me that that's a really key market for Irish whiskey.
Yeah, the US is really important. I think in 2019, 40% of our beverage exports went to the US alone. And I think that's down a lot to the groundwork that's been done by brand ambassadors who were sent there by brands like Jameson, Tullamore Dew, Bushmills, Suntory, which is great. It means that they interact with bartenders who then list the products, it grows distribution, and it introduces new people to the category. So I think it's down to a lot of hard work from different brands. But the US is an important market, and it's definitely changed since I lived there in 2013. I could just about get a bottle of Jameson when I lived there. And that's totally changed now, which is brilliant.
So do you see, sorry, Jenna, are you going to go?
No, I was going to just chime in on that. I actually just got off of a tasting about Irish whiskey and talking about just this resurgence that we're going through that I think is so amazing, because I love Irish whiskey. Like I know I'm supposed to love Scotch, and I do. So don't, don't get your feathers all rustled or anything just yet. But I absolutely love Irish whiskey. I love the history of it. I love the actual whiskey itself. There's just something really special. Like when you taste an Irish whiskey, this is what I was just talking about. Like you're really tasting the place, right? And that's what I love about it. And I've had such magical experiences in Ireland. And I feel like every time I pour a glass of an Irish whiskey, like it just transports me back to being right there. And I think there's something really special about that. And to see so many brands, like Roe & Co., which I was just tasting that literally just a few minutes ago. And it's brilliant what they're doing over there. And, what you were saying about bartenders, I think that's so important, and watching Caroline kind of create Roe & Co. in unison with these bartenders is so important because they are our ultimate educators of whiskey and just spirits in general. So I just wanted to top off that because I was just having that conversation.
Brilliant. Well, Marin, thank you very much for joining us. We'll raise a wee glass for St. Patrick's Day. I don't know what you've got in your glass. Is that our society bottling?
It is. I'm very excited to try it. I haven't yet.
No, I haven't tried it either. Unfortunately, it's not made it as far as the US yet, Jenna, right?
Not yet. We will see it at some point this year, but it's not here just yet.
Sorry about that. Well, this is the 150.1 that we're giving away as a prize tonight. It's the 150th distillery that the Society is bottled from. We don't normally talk about specific distillery names, but I think if you pay attention through the course of the evening, you're going to figure it out pretty soon. It's from down in Skibbereen in Cork, West Cork, and it's an absolute belter, isn't it?
It smells great.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to try, but I don't know, are we allowed to before Dennis joins, are we?
Well, we'll get to Dennis very soon. So let's have a wee sip. Yeah. And I don't know if you're coming to Irish whiskey thinking of a very kind of, excuse me, a smooth triple distilled whiskey. This isn't it. It's really pretty robust, isn't it?
It's super oily.
Yeah. Great mouthfeel.
Wow. Loads of sweetness on the finish.
Yeah.
Loads of caramel, loads of toffee.
Yeah. Packed a punch. It's bottled at cask strength, so 58.7%. It might take a little bit of water, but lots to explore in that one.
Yeah, I think it's okay. It's straight out of the cask, no water, no ice.
For me, it is. But maybe I'm just used to drinking my whiskey cask strength, so it depends where you're coming at it from.
True, fair. No, this is Irish whiskey at its finest, I think.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Well, that's nice to hear.
Quite the compliment on that whiskey. I'm quite excited to taste it myself when it makes its way to the shores of the US.
Definitely. I'm not trying to make you jealous, I promise.
I know, I'm deciding what should I have since I don't have that one just yet.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us, Marin.
Thank you for having me.
Great to see you and for your insights into the Irish whiskey world. So enjoy the rest of your St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, guys. Sláinte.
Thank you very much. Slange. Chin chin. Brilliant. Okay, nice to see you, Jenna. I didn't give you a proper welcome there.
Yeah.
Rushing in the door, but that's great to join us. How's things for you?
I'm excited to be here. Things are going well, so I hope the same for you too.
Yeah, great. Well, let's move on. We have Dennis Hurley waiting in the wings. Dennis is commercial manager at West Cork Distillers, and I don't think it's any great secret that 150.1 happens to come from West Cork, down there in the south of Ireland. So, Dennis, delighted you could join us tonight. At the Society, we're really buzzing about having our 150th distillery bottling for our members. The Society has been going since 1983, and for anyone that doesn't know, we just have this coding system where as we bottle from a different distillery, it just gets the next number. So you're the 150th distillery that we've bottled from in our 39-year history. So it's fantastic to celebrate that on St. Patrick's Day with a wonderful Irish whiskey. So great that you can join us. Tell us a wee bit about the distillery in West Cork and about its background, how it came about.
Yeah, sure. Listen, first and foremost, thanks very much both having me. Delighted. I think a nice round number of being 150th bottling. So I think that's a nice little earmark to start it. So West Cork Distillers, we would be the largest independent distillery here in Ireland. Currently, we'd be producing up to 7 million LPAs per annum, and I suppose the grounding of where the distillery started back in 2003. 3 friends from a small fishing village in Union Hall, just not too far away from Skibbereen, where the current distillery is. So between the 3 guys, one was a colloidal chemist. So he's, I suppose, most recently would have been working head of research and innovation for Kerry Group, and the other 2 were fishermen with young families, but those families were slowly growing. And I suppose with the cap in European fisheries, times were tough. So between the 3 friends, having a look at how could they formulate some revenue stream, something different that could, I suppose, just remove that week to week burden, mainly on the 2 fishermen, Dennis and Jeremy McCarthy. So John O'Connell, his family, I think he said he was a 4th generation of poaching makers. So the background was there, and he was able to draw on some of those experiences, and I suppose the kind of innovator who was himself. They came up with a plan of let's start with whiskey, and at the time there wasn't a huge amount of Irish distilleries. You had the main big players, but there was very few smaller entities, and so it started in a shed in the back of Dennis McCarthy's garden, and slowly but surely they moved premises into Skibbereen in 2013. So you're talking 10 years later before they actually kind of started making a bit of an imprint, bottling themselves on site. And then in 2016, they moved to the current site on Marsh Road, which is on the edge of Skibbereen. So if anyone knows Skibbereen, it would have had a population of about 50,000 people back in the mid 19th century, and through the famine and I suppose immigration, that the numbers have dwindled. So the current population there is about 2,500, and at the minute they would have approximately about 140 employees in the local region. And primarily, people are from that region as well, which is a nice aspect. And I think what the guys would be most proud of is that, the liquid they produce, they would look at it that it's a voice and it represents the people of that region. And I think just the history of West Cork has been, it's a very rugged landscape. It's, beautiful scenery, but there's a hardness as well in the area, that they've lived through tough times over the eras. And I think their greatest vision was that this is a drink that people can find it, that it is accessible, but also it is a quality product. And I think that's really what lays the foundation for the business and where the distillery is today.
Dennis, where did the distillery fit into in terms of the kind of Irish whiskey renaissance? Because it was pretty early days, I suppose. If it was 2003 when it started. So was there a feeling that there was something in the air, that there was something really exciting happening at that point, or was this before that really kind of took off?
It was before, yeah. So speaking with the 3 guys, it's you really get down to the nitty gritty. This wasn't something that really well thought out. I suppose they were trying to figure their way around. The biggest hurdle was that life as a fisherman, and there was has been a number of deaths on the waters over the years, and it's almost a fatigue on the individual and the families, and this was a way of figuring out, well, what can they do, what can they try. And at the time, you had the main players in the likes of Middleton and Jameson, and there wasn't other liquids on the market. So I suppose the way they looked at it, John's background of, in the family of potsherd makers, left the opportunity maybe that, listen, let's try and see what happens. And in speaking to the guys, you can sense the hardship that they did go through to try and come up with, trying to make it work. So during a lot of times it would have been the cash flow issues, trying to lay down whiskey, trying to figure out, where the next sale was going to come from. So it really kind of is a bit of in some regards, rider over is probably not the right term for it, but it really was the battle for themselves of trying to figure out how to get the market for themselves, get a share that they could bring a product that people would actually purchase, I suppose, first and foremost, but secondly then enjoy and actually come back for more, and through that, I suppose, that appetite to really make it work, that they figured that it did come about for them. But there was no, at the time, there was no real sense of a renaissance in the whiskey industry, which is probably the remarkable side of it, that the time for them, it just hit the right notes at the right times, I think. So by the time you're coming into, I suppose after 2008 crash, that things started to pick up, and people started to look at back at the Irish whiskey industry, and like you're talking now, there's over 40 distilleries around the country, and all producing quality liquid, and I think that's a testament, I think, to where the industry is right now, and where I suppose the buoyancy in terms of the global market for Irish whiskey is going to grow over the next decade and beyond, we'd hope. And I suppose that there's a history of Irish whiskey being really strong, going back over the last couple of centuries, and it's great to see, I think, that it is coming back.
Definitely. And I think you've got a wee sample of the Society bottling there, Dennis.
Yeah. I
mean, I've not had a chance to try this already, but I mean, it's robust, it's fruity, but it's a weighty spirit. I would say it's not what I might associated with an Irish whiskey. It's pretty robust and weighty.
Yeah,
those fruits are really coming through now.
Like, we would be standard first fill bourbon cask, so the first 3 years of that would kind of give it that kind of vanilla notes, that sweetness as well, the smoothness. So the finish in a rye cask really kind of emboldens the liquid. It kind of makes it, there's a strong note of pine, even a lavender, but you can still work through it. You can still get a sense of the vanilla notes in it, and there is that sweetness, underlying. So it's a very different kind of a finish. But as you said, I think the tasting notes of it, like it's a kind of a thickness through it.
Definitely.
But it's quite luscious on the tongue. And the finish, the very end finish is that peppery, spicy taste to it. So it's a range of profile, I think, to it, but it's very different from the sweet liquid you'd normally look for, or you'd expect from an Irish whiskey. So there's a lot going on with it. It's actually lovely. You could actually have a few of these, couldn't you?
Definitely. Jenna, do you want to come in there?
This is like torture. You guys, getting to have this. It hasn't made its way here yet, and I'm so much anticipating having that in my glass, because a viscous, weighty Irish whiskey sounds absolutely divine.
Yeah. Sorry, on you go,
Oh,
Jenna.
sorry. No, no. I was just going to ask, what do you think contributes to that weightiness? So tell us maybe a little about what West Cork does a little differently than, any other Irish distillery that really gives it that kind of weighty character.
The base liquid, generally, we would, I suppose, the biggest thing is that it's the quality of the products. We would kind of always look for, the use of Irish barley, Irish grain, and that comes from the local area. We use in spring water, which there's consistency, as much as possible within the product. Over more recent years, let's say from 2016. We've been on site on a single site, so it's on a much bigger scale. Like we've now 14 stills on site, and you're looking at what are we talking now? I think we're 10 stills are whiskey making. 2 of those are continuous. We've got 3 hybrid. What if we think it's 2 lock loamed, 3 frillies. So we do make via the copper pot stills 4.5 million LPAs. So we're looking for a lot of those tasting profiles through the copper compounds coming through the liquid and during the distillation process. So it just means then we would see that there's a lot more flavoring added as much as possible. Those pot stills really give a lot of I suppose a lot of volume to the liquid itself. So when we go into the casks side of it, I think the finishing in first fill bourbon, we generally would use the likes of a Jim Beam, something that wouldn't be I suppose mightn't have stripped the taste profiles out of the barrel quite as much as maybe some other bourbons. And I think there's a balance there as well that, on this particular liquid, with using a rye cask is just, there's a lot more strength, I think, kind of comes back into it through the wood. So very much like what Marin was saying there, that the woods do make a huge impact on the liquid. And especially, I think, Irish whiskey is such a soft, it's a gentle kind of liquid. So, it's trying to manage the process as well of what wood you do use, especially on finishes, that doesn't overpower the end product as well. So because it is such a light and sweet liquid, so there's a nice bit of science, I think, kind of coming into to Irish whiskey generally, and it's probably something that we're I suppose primarily making sure that the base liquid coming at the end of out at the end of the distillation process is quality, and that from there, at least then it's up to the makers that be, that kind of to figure out which casking, if there is going to be varieties that finish off. I had a taste. We have a 5-year-old pot that we're looking to release later this year, and I had a taste off the cask a couple of weeks ago, and my God, the sweetness, the flavor profile, but the sweet, like the smoothness of it was, it was like water, nearly drinking it, which is a bad sign, but also great, I suppose, in terms of selling a liquid as well, that it can hit the marks. So as we get more aged product available, that there's going to be much more bang for our buck.
Well, it's certainly working for us, Dennis, and I'll remind anyone that's tuning in, for UK and EU members, we've got a bottle of this wonderful stuff up for grabs tonight. Just keep an eye on the ticker down there for information about how to get into it. But splendid stuff, Dennis. I'm delighted to catch up with you and celebrate the Society's landmark 150th distillery bottling out on St. Patrick's Day. What could be better? So we'll just say slange to you, Dennis, and to your team at West Cork Distillers.
Slange you. Yeah, thanks for having me on, and all the best for the evening.
Thank you very much. Great to see you. Good stuff. Well, it will make it soon, Jenna. I hope you can get to enjoy it before too long.
I hope so too. I know once it arrives, it'll be just very well received from our members here in the US, especially now, having heard all of these incredible tasting notes. It's kind of hard to not want a bottle of that.
Definitely. Right, we've got a lot to get through, but we're going to return to County Clare for another session from the guys in the Loughlin's bar. So let's go over to them.
Okay, good evening everyone, and I'd like to welcome you all, everybody from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I'd like you to welcome you here to Loughlin's bar in Ballyvaughan, County Clare in the west of Ireland. We're here to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, and tonight with me we have Phelim Collins on keyboard and vocals, and we have Dave Sanders on fiddle. So the first two tunes there, they were hornpipes. The first one was called The Rights of Man, and the second one was called Eileen Oak. Now we're going to move along with Phelim's going to sing us a song. It's called From Clear to Here, and it was written by Ralph McTell back in the 1970s. It was written about his experiences on building sites in London, where he worked with probably a lot of men from around Clare, and that's that's where the song came from. So we're going to move along with that now.
Others for the share the room, for we work hard for the grand. Getting up late on Sundays, we never get the mass. It's a long, long way from here to here. It's a long, long way from here to here. Oh, it's a long, long way. It gets further day by day. It's a long, long way from here to here. When Friday night comes around, he's always into waiting. Me ma would like to let her home, but I'm too tired for waiting. It's a long, long way from here to here. It's a long, long way from here to here. Oh, it's a long, long way, it gets further day by day. It's a long, long way from here to here. I dream I hear the piper play, maybe it's an ocean. I dream I see white horses dance upon that other ocean. It's a long, long way from here to here. It's a long, long way from here to here. Oh, it's a long, long way. It gets further day by day. It's a long, long way from here to here. It's a long, long way from there to here.
Thank you, Phelim. Absolutely gorgeous.
There you go, the guys in the Loughlin's bar in County Clare, almost blowing the speakers with that one. But great stuff. Right, let's move on. Who have we got here? Dave Mulligan.
How you doing, guys? Good to be here.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you. I'm not coming from 1661 tonight. It was maybe a bad idea to shoot from a pub in Dublin on Paddy's Day. So we're actually next door to the bar. We've got a little craft cocktails factory. That's our bottle cocktail brand. And then we've also got a compounding license, rectifying license, and a few barrels on the wall, a few quarter casks. We do some fancy finishes in it as well that you will hopefully see soon.
That sounds very exciting. Well, for those of you who don't know who Dave is, he is the owner of the award-winning Bar 1661 in Dublin, and you are the home of Irish poitín. Can you, like, what even is that, and why, and like, give us the nitty-gritty here on exactly what I have one bottle of it in my house, which I haven't opened yet. But tell us what it is and why this kind of became your passion.
First off, Jenna, what bottle do you have? What brand do you have? Do you know?
It is.
Oh, Killowen, awesome. Yeah, really, really nice. Yeah, awesome. So I make Bawn poitín, and apart from having 1661, it's a really good tasting to have me on, because I'm 10 years in poitín, and the first batch I ever made was with the guys down in West Cork when they were still in Dennis's back garden at the back of his family home. So I've had a long history working with those guys. I currently work with Ecklandville up the north, who were mentioned by Marin. But yeah, I'm a poitín aficionado, evangelicus, whatever you want to call me. Everyone went down the Irish whiskey route as things started to spike. But poitín for me is our national spirit. And as much as people don't want to hear it, without poitín, I don't think there'd be much of a whiskey. You know, we were definitely drinking white spirit long before the barrels came into it. And then the name of our bar 1661, was when the Crown started to tax spirit in Ireland. So that was when poitín and whiskey really went separate directions. Until then, you know, the Parliament spirit, we used to call it, was the stuff made in the big distilleries. But Irish people themselves, they drank what they made at home, and they generally made it from what they grew on the land or their neighbour grew on the land. So it was very much about community, a lot of different flavours around the island. But that illegal distilling is definitely dying out. And, you know, we've near 1,000 years of history, but it's only actually been legal since 1997. So in the grand scheme of things, it's still very new in the world spirits.
So can you tell me a little bit about what is the best way to drink this? So how do you serve it? So if I were to come to see you in Dublin and I said, all right, let me have the full experience here, can you kind of walk me through what that would be like?
I will happily do so, and I should have one in my hand. Instead, I have whiskey in my hand.
I see the whiskey
number one
behind
way
you.
to drink it for me is our house drink at the bar, which we're actually seeing popping up all over Ireland, popping up in the UK, in America, in France. It's called the Belfast Coffee, and it is, everybody knows the Irish coffee, obviously. Instead of whiskey, we use poitín, and instead of hot coffee, we use cold brew. We then give that a quick stir over ice with demerara sugar, so it's the same build up. And then we layer it with double cream and some fresh nutmeg in an Irish coffee glass. It's ice cold. It would rival an espresso martini. And then anyone who knows an Irish coffee, it's very easy to translate. So we use that as a signature serve, not just for my brand. Killowen use it, Mad March Hare use it, Mickle use it. We gave that, I gave that, the bar gave that to the whole industry. It's our margarita moment. It's our caipirinha moment, you know. It's a classic cocktail that the consumer can understand and is easy to replicate, which I think is what poitín needs to elevate it. That's your number one way to drink it. Your number two for me is, mine is empty because I've been waiting here so long, but Bawn, my brand, Bawn just means white in Irish, you know, so the white Irish spirit. But a Bawn in one hand and a black in the other, Bawn and black, that is one of my favorite ways to sip away, yeah.
Dave, how does poitín survive with the growth in the Irish whiskey scene? Is it growing in tandem? Is it able to kind of keep its own side of the market, kind of thing?
100%. I would love to say we're growing in tandem. Take Jameson out, we might be in tandem, you know, but we're not looking to fight against whiskey. You know, there's other world spirits you can look at that really, really complement each other, and I think this comparison gets confused sometimes. But tequila and mezcal, you know, they're made from the same ingredients. Tequila came from mezcal, and for me, Irish whiskey came from Irish poitín, you know. So we're riding the tailcoats a little bit, but we're not looking to steal anybody's shelf space. For me, it only complements a great Irish whiskey selection in a bar to have one or two poitíns. You know, Killowen is their new make whiskey, albeit Brendan there is fantastic at his job. He takes his cuts a little bit different as we do with Bawn to get it in the bottle, but I think as you're looking at artisanal and craft spirits, you know, small batch, like not many people know that the barley in this is grown and malted by Ecklandville. We were also the first people to be distilling potatoes in Ireland in 40 or 50 years. You know, we've now got Mulroy Bay and Belfast and Donegal. They're using potatoes as well. Big misconception with poitín is it should always be potato, but it actually predates the potato in Europe by about 600 years. So there's no argument there. But yeah, I see us, we're growing together, and we really got to complement each other. Like Bar 1661 is a poitín bar. That is what we specialize in, but we also specialize in Irish spirits. So we have 42 different bottlings of poitín since it's been legal. Some you can't get anymore, some are new brands. But, you know, I probably have 200 Irish whiskies there behind it to complement it that we would, outside of the cocktails, we would sell more of. But I think it's the two working together is really great. As a category, it's definitely the smaller companies driving it. So some people are poitín specific. Guys, to shout out Michael in Galway, who've just started making whiskey. Fantastic. I know Dennis said John O'Connell's 4th generation. Porrick is 6th generation illegal distiller. So fantastic, rich history, great stories to be told. Me, I'm a bartender, so we actually do separate distillates and blend them the same way I would a cocktail. Not a traditional style, but I didn't want to have any sort of fake history with it, you know. So younger companies doing it, and I think if anybody can break away with a little bit of success, I mean, every distillery has their white whiskey or their cleric, as you call it in Scotland. Somebody can come out the traps pretty quick. And if it starts to trend globally, and I think things like the Belfast Coffee will really help drive that. Yeah, there's a lot of distilleries. Every distillery can make poitín. I just hope it's not all new make, because if the world wanted new make, Scotland would have done it a long time ago.
Well, so can you tell us a little bit? So I'm in Dublin and I'm coming to the bar. Tell me a little bit about the bar. I see you have some society whiskeys kind of, you know, tucked behind you there. So yeah. I can come and have this incredible, you know, poitín experience, and then I can have some society whiskeys as well.
100%. So a lot of bars in Ireland, a lot of people in Ireland think we make better whiskey. I'll go on record as saying we don't. We're up to 42 distilleries, but I think only maybe 7 or 8 have released. So we can't compete with you guys yet. But a lot of bars maybe ignore Scotch, and they just really focus on Ireland. And I was in London a long time, had a great relationship with the society, was down there a lot. And I said, look, if we're going to do Scotch, let's do it super, super specialist. So the only Scotch we sell is actually Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Super, super proud to do that. And as a springboard, as a launch platform, you know, cocktail culture isn't huge here, and nobody was screaming out for a poitín bar. I just kind of gave it to them. So a lot of the whiskey aficionados were coming in out of interest to see what we were doing with the white Irish spirit. And then when they saw this, you know, collection of maybe 24 society bottlings, they're like, whoa, nobody has them. So it really helped us bet ourselves into that whiskey world and build a cult following, you know, which is still there today. Fionn is a big regular in the bar. And then Graham Cool, who's the head distiller at Dingle, he's actually just left with his family. You know, he's Glenmoray before in Scotland. So we get a lot of guys coming up to check us out. A lot of whiskey people just really want to see the bar and see how we do things a little bit different than tradition. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you got a wee...
I have a wee jam here always. Yeah. I cut it back with a little bit of water. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It's St. Patrick's Day. It's not my first.
Sorry to do this to you again, Jenna, but you know,
I
I've got to
know.
share the drama.
It's okay.
When it comes on.
Jenna, it is spectacular.
So I've heard.
You know, it's really amazing to taste this stuff out of West Cork. West Cork, you know, the bang for your buck, they've released some really great young whiskies. But to taste something like this, 7 years old, I mean, I have always backed those guys, always rated those guys. I think John O'Connell he's the mad scientist, he's the Willy Wonka of the world. But the growth they've done and the amount of small companies they've helped out, I would not have been able to be where I am today had John O'Connell not taken a punt on me, wanted to make my first batch of poitín. So delighted to taste stuff like this. Great to see it with the society. And here's to many more. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Dave, thank you very much for joining us.
So
a busy night in Dublin, so we'll let you get back.
I'm done for the day. An absolute pleasure, guys. Happy St. Patrick's Day and Sláinte to you all.
Same to you.
Cheers, mate. Hope you see you in Dublin for too long.
All the best. You will, Richard. You will.
Cheers. Brilliant. Well, I quite fancy going there, Jenna.
Yes, I'm just listening to the music in the pub. I was like, I wish I was there right now with a pint in my hand and a whiskey in the other, just sitting there and enjoying that. So hopefully
Exactly.
soon.
Exactly. Not no pub like an Irish pub, that's for sure. At least in
Right.
Glasgow, we've got a few good Irish pubs here as well. So you get a good sense of it, even if you're not an island itself. Right. Let's bring in Alex. Alex is standing by first thing in the morning in Melbourne, Australia. So
Not even St. Patrick's Day anymore.
Yeah. Brilliant. Alex has joined us from Melbourne. Alex is a society ambassador down there. And, brilliant to see Alex. You did a fantastic piece for Unfiltered magazine this month. Obviously, we're celebrating the 150th bottling, 150th distillery that we bottled from, and it's an Irish whiskey. So we wanted to look into the history of the society bottling non-Scotch whiskey, and you really dug into this subject and came up with some great stuff. Beyond just a list of bottles that came from elsewhere apart from Scotland. You got some great stories as well about what the society's done, and I suppose the reaction to some of these bottlings.
Yep.
So, I mean, just give us a kind of overview of your findings.
Yeah, so I mean, hi everyone, and happy St. Pat's Day. Great to be joining. This is a part of the society that I just love, all the little historical components of it. And what the article for Unfiltered probably didn't go into too much was just how trailblazing this was in terms of what was available on the market at the time. It's Dave's comments are perfect in terms of bar 1661. It was almost like an if you build it, they will come attitude he had. And to some extent, that was the same with bottling world whiskies for the society. And it was just, we like it, or we've had some good exposure to it. We think our members will like it. So let's produce it for them. But a lot of the times that was being done with a backdrop of that product or that type of product in that style not really being available or not having been tried. And that's certainly the case with, most of the world whiskies, maybe less so as we approach the more modern ones, but certainly sort of the first Irish acquisition of Distillery 51 was back in 1988, which was only, 5 years after the founding of the society. So it was quite a bold move for the then society to say, well, we're the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. We've got our membership starting to grow. We've moved from the sort of Pip Hills syndicate era, but we're going to show our members some delicious liquid that's not Scotch. And then it just sort of kept going from there. When a new good product would be discovered, I suppose, or there might be an inclination to show the members something quirky at first, and then it really developed, such as, say, with the first Japanese whiskey in 2002. That was all about enhancing member experience. And a lot of people forget as well that these new world distilleries that now are so iconic, like Taiwanese whiskey, Japanese whiskey, even Australian whiskey. We've sort of recently bottled the first Australian. They were unknown on a global scene when the society was doing a lot of this. So it's fascinating times.
But not always welcome, Alex, right? This wasn't like in some sectors, I suppose, that it was welcomed with open arms in terms of what the society was doing.
That's absolutely right. And, it's hard to tell just from the archival materials that we have exactly why that might have been. It might have just simply been sort of a pig-headedness of I don't like change. I really like my Scotch. And so that's why I joined the society. I'm a member of this group and I sort of feel like I'm not having my membership honoured because I joined a Scotch society. Could also be just that, and my theory is a lot of it is about that was probably for those people who hadn't tried anything. We're just seeing it in outturns or the then bottling lists. But for those who were trying it and sort of wasn't really taking to it, an explanation for that could certainly be that difference in style. We were in 1983, even when the society was bottling Scotch, that was coming off the back of blends being the only thing that people really cared about. And similarly for sort of a single cask Irish whiskey bottled and released, 1988, that was pretty unusual. So even sort of people who were interested in Irish whiskey were probably used to, the distillery bottlings of a much lower ABV, probably a marriage of casks, almost certainly a marriage of casks, single cask Irish. That wasn't sort of as prominent by far. So it was a shock to the system probably. And there were some amazing stories of some real member indignation. Like I won't name names, but we have them because they were proud of having that thought at the time, of members writing into the society and sort of saying, oh, we really feel like you've let us down. And we hope that there's an amazing letter from about 2002 when there was the launch sort of simultaneously almost of distilleries 116, 117 and 118, which were Japanese, Irish and Irish respectively, same distillery for 17 and 18. And it was a real, oh, look, I hope this is the end of this experimental phase. What will be next? Bottling Japanese or Indian, who will ever appreciate that? And then obviously cut the scene in 2017 and we're proudly bottling Indian whiskey and it's delicious. But there was a real sort of stiff letter to the editor style objection from the membership base, not everyone, at that time. And then there's a really fun, when you actually dig to the materials and you get society nerd like I am, the responses to those letters, because there was clearly I wouldn't want to say factions because it was all quite peaceful and everyone ended up happy, but the people who were rejecting that as a change were probably met in equal, if not greater measure, by the group of society members sort of saying, oh, I popped into Queen Street, I didn't know what to have, I was offered a dram of 116.2 or whatever it may be, and loved it and would never have picked it myself off a shelf or wouldn't have reached for a Japanese whiskey, but glad that they gave it to me. And the amazing thing that all of that brings into context too is we are the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. So when those new world whiskies were being brought into the stable, people who'd go to the Vaults or Queen Street or Greville and ask for a dram of something Scottish and then get given one of the new world could do quite a fun side-by-side. And there's some lovely sort of articles written or mainly just comments given in the letter to the editor style section of a couple of the bottling lists from that era saying, oh, the similarities are so lovely, but the differences are what make them special. And so it was really fun to see members might never otherwise have picked up a Japanese or a Irish whiskey or cask strength single cask Irish whiskey at the time.
I think that's what's so special, though, about what we do is that, yes, you know what? Scotch whiskey is our bread and butter. It is our first true love. It is what we are so proud to bring to members. But two, we're bringing something different. And I always found that, through other spirits or other categories of whiskey, I find I have a deeper appreciation for Scotch whiskey. And, Scotch whiskey has led me to so many different types of spirits, over the years. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm really proud that, we here at the Society, that we offer that to members. We want to expose our members to new things and expand your mind and expand your palate. And I think we do that really well through all of the world whiskeys that we, like you said, have brought to the stable. And I think that's a really special thing that, not everyone does. So absolutely right. Yeah. And on top of that as well, I couldn't agree more. And I think there's that component of when a lot of these whiskies were being acquired, like you'd acquire a distillery for the folio, but that would involve obviously procuring your first cask is effectively how that would happen. And so a lot of the time when these, less so now, and there's an amazing regime under sort of Kai and Ewan to create a spirits portfolio sort of highly managed, which benefits everybody. But back when it was sort of, we have an opportunity to get a couple of casks of, distillery 119. And a lot of the time, a distillery that was giving away casks to independent bottlers probably still applies to a lot of independent bottlers now that don't have, ongoing contracts for regular supply. They would give you a cask of something that wasn't really house style or it didn't really fit into their blending regime of that particular era or whatever. And so you would get some pretty special gems that there was nothing wrong with it. In fact, if anything, they were arguably sometimes a lot better, but they just weren't, for example, a distillery that only really focuses on bourbon cask maturation, has the occasional sherry cask or wants to put the occasional sherry cask into a vatting, might not need as many sherry casks in a particular year as it's generated. So it will sell a couple of sherry casks to like the Society. So then you find these, amazing examples of, well, for example, single cask strength sherry Japanese whiskey, which
for the Japanese palate, just to make a very general comment, sort of back in pre-2000s, wasn't really into the super bold. It was all about elegance, and lots of the distilleries were focusing on really light and complex sort of bourbon cask maturation. So for Society to land some amazing, sherry cask Yamazaki in the early days of bottling any world whiskey was pretty amazing, and meant that probably elevated that to the world stage. As does, New World Whiskey winning awards and all those other things that promote it. But I think personally, the Society had a massive role in making sure that single cask strength, especially as a category to define it like that, was well appreciated globally, because it wasn't sort of before 1983.
Yeah, definitely. And now it feels like we're kind of come full circle to some extent. As you said, the first non-Scotch was from Ireland, different part of Ireland. And Here we are, it's quite a few years later, back in Ireland with 150.1.
That's it. Yep. And I think it just shows that sort of the member comments along the way have sort of probably now been just, if you don't like it, you can still buy Scotch whiskey from us. You don't have to buy the bottle of whatever. So everyone calm down. I don't think there's probably many members that are still of that view anyway, because it's all about that exploration. And I think the Society's done a great job of promoting, with the whole focus on flavour profiles and different things. You shouldn't really be focused too much on what you think it is already. You should focus on how it tastes and whether you like it as a fundamental test. But yeah, the full circle is great, because I think it shows that, even though those early acquisitions might have been a little bit to do with availability, and probably the distillery was a bit unsure when the Society approached them in some cases and said, can we please get whole casks? We want to bottle it single cask. Now, obviously, there are new distilleries coming on board, and we've seen quite a big influx between about 19 and 22, 2019 and 22, where people are very clearly happy to work with us. And it just means that it's mutually beneficial, because, as I'm sure the West Cork team would agree, we get their name out there. We don't sort of, it's a bad example, we don't really put it on the bottle, obviously, but we don't hide who they are, and promote their spirit. And at the same time, we probably do it in a form that then they don't really have to worry about. They can focus on creating a great house style, and everybody wins. So I think it's good to see that full circle is, if anything, probably growing in support, because there was a little bit of a gap in the middle there where there weren't many new codes coming on for world distilleries. But now, yeah, that's not a problem by the looks of it.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Right, Alex, great for you to join us early in the morning, Melbourne time. Maybe a wee bit early for a dram for you.
I've got my breakfast whiskey ready. I wish I had a Belfast coffee now. Listening to
Yeah,
Dave.
right?
That would have been a good call.
Crack open the poaching. Fantastic.
Exactly. I haven't tried 150, but I've got a 51.18. So I am on the Irish for the breakfast.
Very good.
But pleasure.
Excellent. Well, thanks for popping in, Alex. Enjoy the rest of your day. And good to
Slanger,
see you.
guys. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you very much. Good man. Right. Wow. The evening is flying by. But
I know.
it's time for the big Irish whiskey quiz, Jenna. Are you up for it?
Yes, let's give away some cars. Oh, we're not doing that. We're not going to give everyone a car who gets the right answer.
Right. So it's the usual thing. Well, it's been a while since we've done this, actually.
Yeah.
The pub sessions. But the way it works is we do 10 questions. We do multiple choice, and people can just put your suggested answer into the comments, and we'll see how you go before we reveal each answer as we go along. So hopefully everyone's ready. They've got their pencils sharpened, and we can take it away. So Jenna, you want to go off with question 1?
Sure. The founder of Jameson Distillery, John Jameson, was not actually Irish. Where was he born? What nationality was John Jameson? A, English, B, American, C, Scottish, or D, Welsh?
Right. How's your
I don't think I knew this.
No, well, I didn't either.
Oh,
Gotta
we're
be
learning something new. too.
We are. You know, I'm so used to Scottish whiskey knowledge, but you know, as soon as you kind of turn your attention to a different country, then you find out how little you know.
Yes.
Look,
All right.
first
So
Phil straight in there with a C.
how
John,
much time?
yeah, how much time do we give them?
Well,
Shall we just reveal the answer?
yeah. Leslie and John were spot on. The answer is C, Scottish. Wow.
Any fun facts, Jenna?
How about that? Yes. So, fun fact about Mr. John Jameson was that he was originally a lawyer from Alloa, and he married into the famous Scotch whiskey family of the Hagues, and somehow ended up opening a distillery in Dublin in 1780. So,
Very good. I'm just going to have to
not a bad
pick up.
gig.
I'm just going to have to pick you up on your pronunciation of
Yes,
not
please.
Alloa, Alloa.
Alloa.
Yeah,
All right.
Alloa sounds like what? Is that Hawaiian or something?
Alloa.
Alloa.
I'm not sure.
There we go.
All right. See, I'm learning too.
Yeah. Question 2. When are the first written records of whiskey in Ireland from? Right. So 1324, 1650, 1435, or 1200. Right.
I mean, we know it's old,
We know it's old, but how
but
old?
how old?
That is the question. Older than Scotch, right?
Well, I guess that depends on who you ask, right?
Yeah, it
Who
depends
invented whiskey
what
first?
history you're reading. Leslie's straight in with a B. John's going C. Let's see. Any other takers for this one? Andy's in with A. Alexandra with B. Well, let's find out. The
Well,
answer is
someone was right.
someone was right. Who was right? Andy was right. 1324. And this reference comes from something called the Red Book of Ossory, which is a medieval manuscript unearthed from Kilkenny. And it was about 200 years before the first written records of whiskey distillation emerged in Scotland. So, yeah, I think it's in terms of written records, the Irish are way ahead of us by about 200 years, dating back to 1324. So that's your history for you.
Yeah, pretty wild. All right, so the next question is Irishman Aeneas Coffey invented the coffee still, which is in use to this day for grain whiskey production. But what was Coffey's original profession? Was he a priest, a farmer, a barrister, or tax inspector?
Interesting.
Yeah. Little ironic too, this one.
I should say we've got about 5 minutes left in our whiskey competition. Let me just put up my ticker again. Just a last shout out for this wonderful prize of 150.1. And again, last chance to get your entries in to UK and EU members. Email your name and membership number to that email address that you're seeing on the bottom of the screen. I think it's St. Pat's Day competition. It's going to come around in a second. So last chance to get your entry in. Mads is on standby there to sift through the entries and pick a lucky winner at random. There we go. Email your name and SMWS membership number to St. Pat's Day competition at smws.com. And we will announce that in about 10 minutes. So last chance to get your entries in. Right. Sorry, I'm blabbing away about the competition.
No.
So did we get any? Well, we've got a variety there as well. So
Yeah.
the answer is
He was a tax inspector. What? Well, fun fact about Mr. Anais Coffee is that he was specifically working with customs and excise. He was once bayoneted and left for dead in Donegal during the Pachine Wars. He designed his continuous still only after retiring from the government excise service. So I guess what it takes is being bayoneted to create this miraculous still, and the rest is history.
yeah, it sounds like quite a life. He's gone from being an excise
Jeez.
man, almost getting stabbed to death in some fight over Pachine in Donegal, and then he goes away in retirement and invents this continuous still, which basically changes the whole whiskey world.
Right.
That's quite a lot of achievement for one man.
Quite a life.
Okay, question 4. Irish whiskey once ruled the world, but in the 19th century, what percentage of the world's whiskey did distilleries in Ireland supply? Right, so we've spoken a bit tonight about the rise and fall and rise again of Irish whiskey, but in the 19th century, what percentage of the world's whiskey did distilleries in Ireland supply? 30%, 60%, 83%, or 50%? Right, let's
All
see
over
what
the
you've
board.
got. Any idea on that one, Jenna?
I mean, I think I may know.
Andy's in with B. Is that Leslie saying B as well? Oliver's B. Okay, there seems to be a consensus on this one. Maybe that's an easy one, because the answer is, in fact, B, 60%. So 60% in the 19th century, that had fallen apparently to 1% by the 1980s. So just an incredible decline in the Irish whiskey market. But as we've been discovering tonight, it's on its way back up. So a happy ending. Over to you, Jenna.
So, what is the reason for the E in Irish whiskey? Is it A, direct translation from Gaelic, B, added to appeal to Irish Americans, C, to distinguish itself from Scotch, or D, it was a misprint on tax papers in the 1700s?
Good question.
Yeah.
Why, oh why? Glenn says C, to distinguish itself from Scotch. Andy's going for D as a misprint. Leslie and John are going C.
Lots of C's.
Lots of C's. Okay. Shall we reveal?
Let's do it.
Chris is going C. There you go.
And it is, in fact, C, to distinguish itself from Scotch. So, so the fun fact about this was that wasn't always the case. The Irish E only seemed to have become standard in the 1960s. Even now, under EU law, it doesn't matter if it is spelled with an E or without.
Yeah, it seems pretty random. And we're going to be talking to Mark Thompson soon, who's something of a whiskey historian. He might have some light to shed on this one, because we assume that it has an E nowadays, but certainly wasn't always the case. Okay. Question 6. Is this one from me? What is the oldest licensed distillery in Ireland? Is it A, Bushmills, B, Thomondgate? I'm going to struggle with the pronunciation of these as well. C, Mitchell Distillery? Not quite sure. D, Kilbeggan. I'm going to need some help from someone that's actually Irish here to pronounce these. Bushmills, Thomondgate, Mitchell Distillery, or Kilbeggan? Let's see. Oliver straight in there with A. That first Phil coming in with A as well. Andy's going A. John's going A. Oh, there's a consensus here. But are they right? Glenn's A, Leslie's A. Let's see. The answer, in fact, is D. And I think I know why people are going for Bushmills, because it does, I think, kind of market itself as the oldest distillery in Ireland. But Kilbeggan in County Westmeath dates back to 1757, although it was dormant between 1954 and 2007. Bushmills can date its license back to 1608, but the current distillery didn't start until 1784. So Kilbeggan takes the title as the oldest working distillery to date back to 1757. By comparison, Glenturret says it's the oldest distillery in Scotland, and it recently revised its age. It found some new documentation, I think, to prove that it was distilling in 1763. So Kilbeggan was just a few years ahead of Glenturret, and also a few years ahead of Bushmills. So there you go. Every day's a school day.
Yeah,
What are you, Jenna?
So, the light music of whiskey falling into glasses made an agreeable interlude is a quote from what Irish writer? Is it A, W.B. Yeats? Is it B, James Joyce? C, Oscar Wilde? Or D, Seamus Heaney?
How's your whiskey literature knowledge?
Probably not as sharp as my Scotch whiskey knowledge.
It feels to me like basically any Irish writer has come out with some good lines about whiskey over the years, right?
Yes, and for good reason.
Andy's going C, Oscar Wilde. Leslie's going C, also Oscar Wilde. Glenn's going C. John's going for James Joyce. Any more? Oliver in for C. Oliver Cooksey for C. Oliver Klaus for B. Okay, bit of a mixed bag for this one.
Yeah.
Alexander a B. Okay. The answer, Jenna?
Well, is, in fact, James Joyce. And a fun fact from the Dubliners is, although you don't have to look too far to find an Irish writer who celebrates the joys of whiskey.
Correct. Okay. Question 8. Poitín is the original spirit and moonshine of Ireland, but what year was the spirit finally legalized? And I think Dave in bar 1661 already mentioned this, so if you were paying attention, this should be an easy one for you. A, 2010, B, 1985, C, it's still illegal, or D, 1997. So this should be a doddle for anyone that was tuned in to Dave's chat about Poitín. Let's see. Yeah, they were paying attention. Okay. Oh, well, still a bit of a mix. So the answer is 1997. But we should point out that I think, as Mark Thompson will confirm, it's still illegal to distill Poitín in Northern Ireland. So the 1997 date applies to the Republic of Ireland, but where it's now legal to distill Poitín, but not in Northern Ireland. So there you go.
Very interesting.
Right, Jenna?
All right. Well, the next question is, what does the cocktail Black Velvet consist of? Is it A, Guinness and Baileys, B, Guinness and Champagne, C, Guinness and Whiskey, or D, Guinness, Coffee, and Rum? Have you ever had one of these before?
You know what? I can't remember having a Black Velvet, and if I've been offered one, I've probably run a mile. Have you?
I have. And at first when I went into it, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I actually did. So
Yeah, it's one of those ones you think it's not going to
Yeah,
work,
you're like,
but it does.
yeah. Somehow
Okay.
they
Right. Do we get any takers? I should say that's our competition closed. So I'm going to remove that. For all of you who have entered, we will draw the winner immediately after this quiz. And Mads is on standby. She's been gathering all the entries and used some kind of aggregator to select a random winner. So it's all been done in a fair way. Right. So these are our entries. B. Yeah, mostly B. Right, Jenna?
And you're spot on. It is, in fact, Guinness and champagne. And this was said to first be made by a bartender in Brooks Club in London in 1861 to mourn the death of Prince Albert, husband of Queen Victoria. And it symbolized the black armband worn by mourners. So it's a sad cocktail, but a mildly delicious one.
Yeah, any excuse. Okay, last question. Irish whiskey must only be matured in A, oak casks, B, freshly charred new oak casks, C, any type of wooden cask, or D, walnut casks. All right, and again, I think this one came up in our chat with Marin at the start of the live stream. We spoke about this. So again, if you were tuned into that and you're paying attention, you will know the answer already. And it looks like you were paying attention. Everyone was going for C, any type of wooden cask. Easy. There we go. Yeah, any type of wooden cask. And what's our fun fact? It is, yeah, unlike Scotch Whisky Association regulations that only allows maturation in oak, the Irish Whisky Technical File of 2014 only requires the use of wooden casks, and non-oak species have become something of a category differentiator. So I guess Irish distillers can play around a little more with their maturation. How about that? Right, thanks for everyone for taking part. Good effort. We are coming to Mark Thompson shortly. It looks like Mark Rainier, whatever airport he's in, he's having trouble connecting because I don't see any sign of him yet. We'll give him a wee bit longer, but we'll see if Mark can join us. He checked in earlier and he was having connection difficulties, but hopefully he will sort something out. But in the meantime, let me add Mads Schmall is here.
Hello.
Our Scotch Malt
Hi,
Whisky
Mads.
Society social media guru. Mads, how you doing?
I'm good. Happy St. Patrick's Day, guys.
And to you.
Thank
I'm
you.
still nursing my 150.1 here.
Yeah, I've got a wee jam. It's not from Distillery 150, but it's a different distillery, not Irish, but I've got a wee Irish beer next to me, so that's nice.
Nice. Well, you've got all the more reason to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, right?
Aye, yes. I married an Irishman, and fun fact about me is I was actually supposed to be born on St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
So, didn't happen for whatever reason, but you know.
Close. Close, but no St.
close,
Patrick's
but
Day.
no cigar. Yeah. Anyhow, I think what everyone really wants to know about is probably the competition and who's won.
Yes. Tell us.
So we had 38 entries and we randomly selected a winner. And the lucky winners from the UK, it is Mr. Andrew Cotton.
Woohoo.
So congrats, Andrew Cotton. We will be in touch with the details and get your bottle sent out to you.
Great. Is Andy still online there? Give us a shout out, Andy. Let us know that you're there. You were taking part in the quiz, I saw. So
There he is.
there he is. Andy says, woohoo.
Congrats.
Fantastic. Yeah, brilliant, Andy. So congratulations. What you need anything from Andy just now, Mads?
I've got his membership number, so I will be in touch through that.
Tremendous. Well, congratulations, Andy. Thanks to everyone else for taking part. There's always something going on at the society that you can potentially win something. So lots more competitions to come. But Mads, thank you very, very much for managing that behind the scenes and making sure it was all done fairly and legally and everything was in good order. So brilliant. And now you can enjoy the rest of your St. Patrick's night.
All right. Well, cheers, everyone, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Brilliant. Nice to see you, Mads.
Nice to see you.
Mads.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Great stuff. Right. Well, as I say, Mark Rainier, I think, is having connectivity issues wherever he is in Newark Airport, I think. But we're delighted to have Mr. Mark Thompson waiting in the wings. Mark, great to see you. How are you doing? Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I'm doing the best, Richard. Thanks for the opportunity to have a chat with you tonight.
Yeah, great. You could make it. I'm sure many people have seen you, Mark. You've done several things, whiskey related, or the first thing is Whiskey Talking that you did with Fiona O'Connor,
Right.
which I thought was brilliant. Just a really good overview of Irish whiskey history. And more recently, you've been working on Haim about the connections between Ireland and Scotland, Ulster Scots in particular. So it feels like you're really across the kind of connections between Ireland and Scotland, and very much in the whiskey side of things. So just tell us about your kind of interest in that. Where does it come from?
Well, where I live, Richard, I sometimes nickname the Far East because it is the very most easterly point of all of Ireland. I can look across the North Channel. I can see the Mulligan nearly every day, certainly every day that it's clear and sunny. And my family ancestry has been one of coming and going between the two shorelines. So the connection is very easy. It's a very natural thing, and throughout my adult life, I've been gathering up all sorts of stories and artifacts and items that tell and improve the kind of fascination of that connection, and naturally whiskey had to become one of those things. Fionnán is a legend in the industry. He's known from San Francisco to Dublin to New York to just everywhere, and it was a real pleasure just to spend a bit of time in his company. He definitely educated me and introduced me to some things that I hadn't tried before.
How does whiskey connect the two countries from your point of view?
Well, there's a moment, Richard, which really does fascinate me. Nowadays, we regard them as two very distinct markets and industries, and certainly from a marketing and promotion point of view, there's great care and attention paid through technical files and the sorts of the spelling of the E issue that you talked about earlier on. But about 100 plus years ago, there for a couple of generations, where I am here up in the northeast of Ireland, there were 6 or 7 distilleries here who were in partnership with distilleries in Scotland, and under their brand names, they were selling both Irish and Scotch. And senior staff were transferring between the two places. Techniques were being shared between the two places. And so the separation that we imagine today, historically, really probably wasn't there at all.
Yeah, because I saw in the documentary that, it was an eye-opener for me, the fact that you travelled from the north coast of Northern Ireland and you were over in Islay in no time at all, but Campbelltown is just over here. And there's this little whiskey triangle. And, in the days of, non-motorized transport, these places were like very close and very connected. So there was a kind of real synergy between these three places, Islay, Campbelltown, and the Ulster coast.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Up on that north coast in particular, you can see Islay, you can see Jura, you can see a number of the other Hebridean islands as well, just with the naked eye. It's really, really easy. And that's the whole way from Donegal, with that very famous Inishowen variety of Irish whiskey that was developing in the early years, pre-industrialization. But even then, when the bigger distilleries start to develop and grow, we saw newspaper adverts for even Bushmills, for example, which was advertising itself as having a peated Islay flavour. The same with Coleraine, the same further along the coast at Limavady. And again, it's all about just the coming and going of traditions and techniques and methods. The day that we went to Islay, we zoomed across on a big powerboat on a rib from Ballycastle into Port Ellen. And I must admit, it was pretty bumpy out there. It was the tail end of November. The tides were pretty big. We weren't sure if we should do the crossing, but it gave us a real sense of what it must have been like in the days of wooden ships and maybe even boats that were being rowed across that water on an ongoing basis. You know, when you skim around the corner of Rathlin Island, you go past Bruce's Cave. And I know that there are a number of places in Scotland that claim to be Bruce's Cave. But there's one on Rathlin Island as well. So again, it's another example of just that interconnectedness that we have.
Oh, we can't hear you, Jenna.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Ah, yeah.
All right.
Hi.
Brilliant. All right, brilliant. So I do have a quick question for you. So can you talk a little bit about, just because this is your background, you know, in graphic design, can you
Yep.
talk a little bit about, you know, labeling and package and all of these things that go into, you know, creating a bottle of whiskey? Was it a little different in Ireland? Did they put a lot of emphasis on that? Or can you just touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, wow, brilliant question. Well, you're absolutely right, Jenna. My background has been in advertising agencies and design consultancies in Belfast, and I've been doing that for, well, 25 years or so. And heritage has been a big part of that, whether it's tea brands or bread brands or even museum fit outs and interpretation. Heritage is a big part of what I do. So hence it was natural for me that when a whiskey client came along in the form of Echelinville Distillery, you're just a few miles away from me here, that would be a very natural thing for me to do. In the Victorian era in particular, some of the whiskey packaging and marketing is still world class. Some of the artifacts that people have in their collections are just things of absolute beauty. And I suppose that came along at a time when companies really needed to start to distinguish themselves in the marketplace. Even if they were sourcing spirit from a big industrial distillery somewhere, again, or probably around Belfast, when they were bottling it and labeling it and naming it, they wanted to make sure that what they had, to the customer at least, appealed to be different and distinctive. Now, my neighbours at Echelinville quite rightly homed in on the biggest of those Victorian brands from Belfast. And I'm going to let you see this here, because this is a fairly faithful reproduction of the Dunville's label. It's one of the most unique pieces of Victorian graphic design on this island. And so when Echelinville opened, it was the first distillery in the north of Ireland, at least in about 125 years. They acquired the rights to revive Dunville's. And not only is this visually absolutely beautiful and faithful to the original Victorian glory, but this has won numerous World Whisky Awards over the last number of years. It comes in a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and there are cask strength varieties as well. Dunville's was a pioneer of this kind of marketing. Some of their mirrors will exchange hands for tens of thousands of pounds. And there's a very, very lucrative market in original Dunville's artifacts. There are a couple of bars in Belfast that some of your viewers will know. The Hart Bar, the Duke of York, absolutely full of magnificent, magnificent memorabilia. And it appears to me, you know, from a commercial point of view, that printing techniques and reproduction techniques just blossomed in the late 1800s, and whiskey brands were some of the first to use multiple color printing and some of that exquisite craftsmanship on mirrors and other promotional items. They're absolutely beautiful, and it all adds to the romance and the glamour and the appeal of making a whiskey desirable.
That's a
I
beautiful,
agree so much.
beautiful label.
It is really beautiful, and we taste with our eyes first, right? And
Yep.
so to have something with this strikingly beautiful label, like you're instantly just drawn to that. And
Yeah.
I have fallen to that myself. I have picked whiskey strictly just based off of the packaging, because sometimes it's
Yeah.
just so beautiful. You're like, well, I guess if it doesn't taste great, it'll look
yeah.
pretty on the shelf.
Absolutely. And sometimes these communication things are where a client doesn't get it right, is they worry about being too informative. They want to get all the facts across, but you've got to engage an audience. You've got to inspire them in some way. And people buy pretty things. It really does come down to that. People buy pretty things, and there's a little sort of 3-step process that sometimes we discuss when we're in client meetings, which is first of all, catch the eye. Secondly, stick in the mind. But thirdly, be taken to heart, because you really want your customer to fall in love with your brand, especially these days when people tend to make most purchasing decisions either from their phone or certainly before they go near a store. So you really need to work very, very hard, because when they're in a store, they don't want to spend too much time there. They want to make a decision, make the purchase, and come away again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I love all of this stuff, and there are so many truly beautiful examples. Dunville's, back in the day, claimed to be the world's largest whiskey producer. Their big distillery was called Royal Irish Distilleries in Belfast, and they were so ambitious, and they, at director level, they had a number of people who were of Scottish descent. So they bought Bladnoch for a while down in Galloway. I can see Galloway out my window here. And for, I think, about 20 years, through Bladnoch, Dunvilles were offering Dunville Scotch in tandem with their own range of Irish whiskies. One of their managers, one of their directors was a guy called David Mitchell. Now, David Mitchell was from Scotland originally. I think he worked in one of the Campbelltown distilleries. He came to Belfast to become MD of Dunvilles. He decided then to go out on his own, and he produced his own. I'm trying to hold this so you can see it. Mitchell's old Irish whiskey, and this absolutely fabulous old flagon. But his brother back in Scotland, I think his name was Robert. He was still in the industry, and they decided to join forces. So you've got Mitchell's old Irish whiskey on the one hand, and Mitchell's Heather Dew Scotch on the other, but using remarkably similar and very famous, iconic packaging methods. Back in Belfast,
so cool.
I mean, back in Belfast, the Lord Mayor of Belfast at the time was a guy called Sir Edward Cowan, and his uncle William had been in the whiskey business as well. And when William died, Edward inherited the whiskey business, and he was doing the same sort of thing. So in Belfast, this is a water jug. I'll try and hold this straight for you. Cowan's number 4 old Irish whiskey, Belfast, but he was also sourcing and selling Cowan's own special Scotch whiskey, and it's just part of the natural geography where we are. For I don't know, maybe 150 miles from where I am, all the way around to North Donegal, you can see Scotland. People are coming and going all the time. You go to Scotland for work, or for studies, or for love, or for holidays, and it's just such a natural relationship between our two countries.
Fantastic. Mark, that's brilliant. Really nice overview. And I can recommend, if anyone's got access to iPlayer, to first of all, check out Whiskey Talking, the show you did with Fenn O'Connor, which is just a fantastic overview of Irish whiskey history, the rise, the fall, and the rise again. It's a great hour to spend educating yourself about Irish whiskey, and also Haim is really good stuff. Nice to see you in Port Patrick, one of my childhood haunts that I still like to go to. So you're exploring those connections between Scotland and Ireland and Hame as well. So really nice series there.
Yeah. Well, given that it's St. Patrick's Day, it would be remiss of me not to point out that all of your traditions of St. Patrick having been born on the banks of the Clyde. I mean, just near Dumbarton Rock, just west of Glasgow, there's a little town which is still called Old Kilpatrick. And there are a number of distilleries along that shoreline there as well, of course, at Auchentoshan, not to mention only one. So maybe someday one of your members might consider releasing a Patrick's Birthplace single malt. That would cause a bit of a stir in Ireland, that's for sure.
Definitely. Good. You're giving us good ideas here, Mark. Brilliant. Well, nice to see you.
If anybody wants a label design, give them my number.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Very much appreciated. Enjoy the rest of St. Patrick's Day.
Lovely to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Fantastic. Right. Well, it looks like Mark Rainier is not going to join us this evening. That's a pity. Obviously, we were all looking forward to hearing from Mark and the incredible things that he's doing at Waterford. We'll just need to get him on for another session, Jenna.
Yes, and it is worth doing. That place is pure magic, is all I will say. I will leave, the mystique to when you get to sit down with him, but it is a really special place over there, and they're doing remarkable things. So
well, we've covered a lot of ground tonight, but
yes,
we'll come back and chat with Mark another time. But let's send off. I think we've got one more little set of music to play us out. So let's return to County Clare for a very short little reel, I think it is. So here we go.
We're going to finish up now with two reels. The first one is Mist and Clouds, which will be known to everybody in Scotland anyway. And the second one is Tom Moore's Downfall, which his downfall was probably whiskey. I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and I'd like to thank our host Margaret here for hosting us tonight. And have a good St. Patrick's Day. Okay.
Wishing you all a great St. Patrick's Day from all of us here in O'Loughlin's Bar in Ballyvaughan, County Clare.
There you go. One last reset from O'Loughlin's Bar in County Clare. What a place, huh?
it is. It's so beautiful. Just seeing the scenery, just seeing, all of the beautiful places that are in Ireland. It's a special place.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, well, Jenna, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Great to see you. And as I say, we'll get Mark Rainier on another time and have a chat with him. But it's been a bit of an education for both of us tonight, I think.
Yes, I learned quite a bit. And to learn a little bit about even just the packaging of a whiskey is so important, and definitely something I'll be doing a little more research on.
Great stuff. All right, Jenna, lovely to see you as always. Slange. Cheers. Right, folks, that's us, I think. Thanks for taking part tonight. Congratulations to Andy on winning the bottle of 150.1. Been a really good evening. What have we got coming up? We've got new bottles online tomorrow if you're in the UK or EU. And I should say we've got some special fundraising tastings coming up for the DEC Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal with tastings. All the proceeds from these tastings are going to the DEC Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal. I think it's Edinburgh on the 23rd of March, London 24th of March, Glasgow on the 12th of April. So check the website for details on those. It just remains for me to say thank you to all our guests, Marin Summers, Dennis Hurley, Dave Mulligan, Alex Moores. We didn't speak to Mark Rainier, but we did speak to Mark Thompson. Great to catch up with him. And our musicians from County Clare, Phelim, Dave and Alan from O'Loughlin's Whiskey Bar. Mads for taking care of our competition. Thank you very much for that. Jenna for coming in from the US. And Helen Brownless from the Society, who's been very helpful in pulling all of this together as well. So thanks, folks. Really good to see you all. And I wish you all a very, very happy St. Patrick's Day evening. Good night.